coming up on Makosi Today.
Honorable Mzembi, UNWTO, what's that about? Economically, how does Zimbabwe, Zambia, say the whole of Africa benefit from hosting the UNWTO?
We have now understood that without the African brand flying, it doesn't matter whether our individual brands are doing well, the African brand itself will inflict collateral damage.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Makosi Today. UNWTO is coming to Africa, Zimbabwe and Zambia to be specific, from the 24th of August to the 29th of August 2013. Today I have the privilege to have Honorable Walter Mzembi, Minister of Tourism Zimbabwe, to promote Brand Africa.
The 20th Assembly of the United Nations World Tourism Organization is like the World Cup of the multi-billion-dollar tourism industry. But it's more than just money at stake. It's national pride for the two countries co-hosting the event. Delegates from over 180 countries will converge at the Victoria Falls in August. Makosi chats with the man responsible for making sure everything goes according to plan.
So, Honorable Mzembi, UNWTO, what's that about?
The UNWTO is one of the United Nations specialized agencies, together with the World Bank, the IMF, ITU, ICAO, and others. So, every year or biennially, they are required to hold their general assemblies in destinations that have been agreed by the voting membership of those organizations. And in this case, we have the privilege between us and the Zambians to host the 20th session of the next General Assembly. And in that regard, obviously there's a lot of hype and buzz around the word or the acronym UNWTO in the country at the moment.
Do they always host them between two countries, or Zambia?
No, this is a unique union between our two countries. Inspired, of course, by the need for regional integration in the region and sharing of heritages. In this particular instance, we happen to share the Victoria Falls as a destination, Zambia and Zimbabwe. So when we leveraged with the destination itself, the Victoria Falls, we then put our bid to say it would be Zimbabwe and Zambia.
Tell me something, how does a country or countries get picked to actually host something like this?
Well, it's by election. It's by elective vote. Like the UNWTO has a membership of 186 countries and 400 affiliate organizations. But those that are voting in this instance are actually the nation member states, the 186 nation member states. So we obviously go into council and we fought for the next destination that would host the General Assembly. In the past, in 2011, it was South Korea. In 2009, it was Astana, Kazakhstan. And as I know, and as I am informed now, it could be Colombia. They've put in their bid.
After us?
After us as the next host. And they are yet, obviously, to do their lobby with the entire membership, but they are the most visible in terms of their campaign.
Economically, how does Zimbabwe, Zambia, say the whole of Africa benefit from hosting the UNWTO?
Well, first and foremost, benefiting is really a function of the nation that is hosting its own vision. And in this instance, I want to draw parallels with what took place in South Africa when South Africa went for the World Cup 2010. And obviously they sat down as cabinet, as government, and agreed on legacy projects that would remind them that they once upon a time hosted a World Cup in their country. So they started redoing their airport, and if you look at OR Tambo today, it's a far bigger. In fact, it passes for a capital city of another African or European country for that matter. The highway system has been upgraded. Each province in South Africa has been endowed with a national stadium or stadia of a world-class standard. And what they've proceeded to do with that is now to leverage with those assets to even continue to bid for more international events. And no wonder why just recently we had the African Cup of Nations in South Africa. In our own backyard here in Zimbabwe, the Harare International Conference Center, the Rainbow Towers itself, is a product of President Mugabe's own vision in the past around the need to host a Commonwealth Heads of Government and Summit in Harare. And it then inspired and necessitated and prompted the need for a legacy conferencing facility. So when we look at it now, 2 decades later, it is obviously not connected to the event itself, but people are now, we have it, and it is hosting all sorts of events, including church meetings.
Wow. Drawing from that, how are other African countries contributing or participating in the UNWTO? You see how when we had the World Cup in South Africa, Zimbabwe offered stadiums and accommodation facilities for other teams to come and board here. How are other African countries getting involved?
Well, like in the South African example, beyond the legacy events and assets that they put in, they obviously sold us a dummy, for lack of a better word, because they promised Africa that we would be able to host at least the neighborhood, would be hosting some of the playing teams in our own backyards. The only ones who succeeded in actually just having a training session, a playoff, was Zimbabwe and Tanzania when we hosted Brazil. Beyond that, obviously, there was no active participation other than just being spectators. And it is that which inspired our vision to actually show in a practical way that Africa could actually formulate partnerships between member countries that would go out and bid for such legacy events like the UNWTO that we now have. But going back to your question, which had gone unanswered, as to the benefit for Zimbabwe and Zambia, it's more on the intangible side in terms of global endorsement of the destination, the Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe and Zambia, a global endorsement of our destination. Because when you bring 186 countries to a destination, when you bring 400 businesses, 400 affiliate businesses, 400 international media to a destination, obviously the spotlight is on that destination, on those 2 countries. And it's brand endorsement of the highest order. Beyond that, you start seeing the benefits. In fact, today, the benefits of World Cup 2010 in South Africa are only starting to get felt now as they begin to leverage with the assets that have been planted by the World Cup itself in bidding for future events, Africa Cup of Nations, and future events that they shall bid for. And in an equal sense, we had premised the same vision around the Victoria Falls as a destination, to the extent where we've set aside 1,200 hectares of our most prime land in the Victoria Falls for legacy assets. They may not be ready for the General Assembly, but we want to plant the vision, we want to plant the seed, and begin to see a new Victoria Falls that is infrastructurally complete, just like what the Niagara is to the United States and Canada. Those 2 nation states, they basically own the Niagara Falls, and it's a $30 billion economy. While it's here in our backyard, the Victoria Falls economy is just $1 billion. So the opportunity investment-wise is in closing that gap. The $29 billion gap is what we should be closing, and close it by making sure that we plant legacy assets, new hotels, new restaurants, new entertainment infrastructure. If you go to the Victoria Falls today, it is an attraction to a certain demographic group, the aged, and they come in pairs to relax, to convalesce, to forget and shut out from the world. But the active people like yourselves, your age, would not stay there for a day longer than necessary, because after you see the water curtain, you have absolutely no need or reason to stay. You see the wildlife, you do a few activities, and you want to move on. But if you have entertainment that locks you in, then you would perhaps spend 2-3 more days. And what is tourism is really arriving in the first instance and expenditure. So if you receive arrivals and you are not able to trap them for a longer period, then you are not doing well.
After the break, we are talking about how UNWTO is changing the face of Africa. So, Honorable, where is Africa? Where does the whole of Africa fall in all this?
Well, this is the second time that a General Assembly of this order in tourism is coming to Africa, after Senegal hosted it in 2005. So to that extent, we've seen it fit to brand it a uniquely African General Assembly. So we'll do things out of the tradition of the UNWTO General Assemblies and brand it typically African. to the extent where we have now understood that without the African brand flying, doesn't matter whether our individual brands are doing well, the African brand itself will inflict collateral damage to our own individual entity and individual national brands. So we are seeking to make sure that we pitch the African brand. Why? Because Africa today, out of the global tourism performance of about 1.3 trillion in direct earnings and 6 trillion in gross domestic product impact, we are only enjoying a 3 to 4% market share of that global economic performance. With arrivals, we have just hit the 1 billion mark globally. Africa again is only enjoying about 3%. So we seek out of this General Assembly a policy agenda that interrogates why we are doing so badly, why we are at the fringes of global performance. And typically we shall be examining issues around the performance of African airlines. Why out of the entire African continent we have no more than 4 viable African national carriers, and interrogate that and come up with answers that we can table before our national governments. We seek also to interrogate the issue around visa facilitation. Why Africa still respects the Berlin Conference borders and boundaries that were imposed on us by colonialism, when colonialism itself in their own backyard, Europe, has actually pulled down its own barriers and introduced the Schengen visa.
Yes.
The Schengen visa, you enter through one country, you have entered 27, 28 countries. In Africa, we still respect the boundaries that we did not impose on ourselves, but were imposed by the same people, to the extent where intra-Africa trade, which contributes 80% of our own arrivals amongst ourselves, is being inhibited. Because when you want to move to Nigeria, for example, I have to get a visa. When the Nigerians want to come to Africa, this part of Africa, Southern Africa, Zimbabwe in particular, they also have to get a visa. And we are downgrading each other to the least categories of free travel, category C. And it's an iniquity, actually, for Africans to do that to each other. So we seek to interrogate those issues. And obviously, the issue around joint packaging of African economic blocks building into an African brand shall become critical. There is absolutely no sense for any international arrival from Europe to target Zimbabwe and say, I'm just going to Zimbabwe and I'm not going to do Mozambique and South Africa. There's no economic value. So when they come here, they say, I'm going to Southern Africa. In fact, typically, international arrivals, when they visit Africa, they say, I'm going to Africa. They never say, I'm going to Zimbabwe or to Mozambique. They see us as one entity, one homogeneous entity. So to that extent, we must begin to take the mischief out of the African brand. Africa must start to tell its own story. We must begin to fight images with images, because the images that you see on international media, mainstream media, CNN, BBC, about Africa, are a sorry sight. It's a sorry story, and it doesn't inspire or prompt anybody in Europe or the United States, for example, to begin to make a decision to travel to this part of the world. So this sort of thing where we now have African media in the order for CNN, BBC, is something that we really must encourage. So it is an African General Assembly. So
it is really changing the face of Africa?
Absolutely, because it is about brand Africa, and we realize that if we start selling our individual brands, even though Zimbabwe and Zambia are the host countries, they are simply platforms within a theater that is called Africa.
Before we go, I'd like you to talk to me through all of this. Like, how many awards do we have here? And I'm sure you have some.
Well, there must be. This is just half of what I've been honored with in the last 5 years. I'm the reigning African Tourism Minister of the Year. I was honored recently in 2011 as Zimbabwe's Public Service Manager of the Year. Recently, I've just come back from Nairobi, where I was honored as one of the African Achievers by the African Achievers Awards. They've recently honored Bishop Desmond Tutu, President Joyce Banda, and posthumously President Atta Mills of Ghana. And I'm very humbled, indeed, that I was chosen to stand shoulder to shoulder with these African luminaries in recognition of the work that we have done for African tourism. And it was not honoring Zimbabwean performance, but honoring the work that we have done for Africa in terms of tourism, because we continue as advocates to sing about the need to bring Africa's own contribution to global tourism arrivals to global tourism revenue earnings to double-digit levels, at least by 2020. But by doing so, we must obviously interrogate the issues that I was alluding to earlier. Yes. The issues around barriers to travel and accessibility of our own destinations. For example, why would we keep Zimbabwe, in this instance, close to Nigerians? Or Nigeria close to Zimbabweans?
We want Nigerians to come and invest here.
Yes, we want Nigerians. Nigeria is projected by 2030, and even earlier, more recently by research study, it is projected to surpass South Africa. South Africa, which is our biggest trading partner, as the biggest economy in Africa. 230 odd billion in terms of gross domestic product, 160 million people. So they have the scale that we are looking for. And if only we can begin to invest and enjoy Nigerian income and money, and then we will be flying. And currently what is happening is that Europeans are enjoying Nigerian money. Exactly. And in itself it is an iniquity, because they must visit home first. Charity begins at home. So we must begin to make our economies impact on ourselves more than it should impact on Europe. Europe itself has understood that tourism earnings, they are the low-hanging fruit, and they've decided to trap their own tourism incomes within their own borders. That's why they've introduced the Schengen visa. What they're basically saying is, please stay at home, visit home, do a domestic holiday, do a regional holiday. When you want to depart from the United Kingdom, for example, to visit this part of the world, the airport departure taxes are highly punitive. They are earning £2 billion for the United Kingdom for those that dare travel. But they would rather you go to Spain, in Madrid, or Madrid visits London.
But that's what we need here.
And that's what we need here. That kind of economic patriotism is what we lack here. And when people here think of holiday, they don't think Luangwa Valley in Zambia. Neither do they think of Filankulus in Mozambique, nor the Karoo of Botswana and Namibia's deserts. We always think of this exotic place which has become the concrete jungle of the world, and that is Europe. And yet Europe yearns to visit the only authentic product left in the world, and that is Africa. On the policy agenda of the General Assembly, the issue of visa facilitation will feature very prominently. And obviously it's a lesson to Africa to say, do what the Europeans are doing, do what the Americans are doing. The Americans have come up with a green card system. Basically what they are saying is they are opening their arms and receiving new people onto their homeland, trapping skills, trapping capital, and other attributes, positive attributes that they seek to suck out of our citizens worldwide. By equal measure, we must begin to have a conversation as Africa around the issue of visa facilitation, to say how can we make sure that there's cross-fertilization, cross-movement of our own skills within the African border perimeters, beyond just going to Europe and other destinations. So it has been established by a research study more recently that out of every 62 visas that are processed in the United States, they create one new job. In Africa, it's far less than that. It's 8 visas. They create a new job. And that's why it's easy in tourism to create a job, because you open a restaurant today, people are already employed. You visit the Great Zimbabwe area, already you have something, an opportunity to engage tourist guides, people who can, without too much training, just rudimentary knowledge, begin to do tour guiding and so forth. So we need visa facilitation. We need to open our borders and understand that the more folks that visit, the more jobs that we can create. And that was President Obama recently to his own people in the United States.
So we open our borders with our visas. How safe is it to be coming to Africa, to Zimbabwe?
Well, the Europeans were preoccupied with the same security issues until they started taking the first step in just pulling down those barriers. Essentially, we have enough security safety nets to be able to check on criminals who may take advantage of this system. But I would rather turn away 10 criminals at our own Harare airport when they've arrived and spent on Air Zimbabwe than to turn them away in their own backyard when they have not actually boarded Air Zimbabwe itself. Because 51% of our global arrivals, they arrive by air. So you start making the money on board
Right.
Yeah, so and that's where the mischief is within our African tourism economies. We're allowing European airlines to cream all our incomes because they are the ones with all sorts of degrees of freedom in landing anywhere and everywhere in Africa, and we don't have a model that supports our own national carriers because we want them to make a profit. But national carriers don't make profits. They break even at best. They facilitate other business lines like tourism, like mining, like agriculture, because virtually today 70 to 80% of our arrivals in Zimbabwe, they are at the international airport, are business tourists. So what we should be interrogating is not Air Zimbabwe making a profit at all, but to say which sectors of our economy is Air Zimbabwe facilitating. Then create a subsidy fund where we then discount earnings from those areas that are performing into this subsidy fund to support Air Zimbabwe so that it continues to fly and carry our nationhood totally in the skies and find its own point of equilibrium with other national carriers. Would it not be nice to land at Lagos and see our bed there, land at London, Durban, Cape Town, and find Air Zimbabwe omnipresent as much as you find South African Airways omnipresent in almost every international airport. But do they make a profit? No. They recently went to Fiscus, to Treasury, to ask for an additional 5.8 billion rands to keep on flying. And that's really the answer. The answer is, do you want to make a profit at that level, or you want to make a profit at your other revenue lines like tourism, business, mining, and so forth? Yeah, so that's essentially where we are.
So how is the ordinary African, like Zimbabwean, Zambian, and anybody else, participating in such a world-class event?
Well, with a global audience of the order that I've already alluded to, 186 countries, 400 affiliate business organizations, 400 media, it's an opportunity to expose their own products to the global eyes, to the global market, because so often we have so much going for us in us crafts, art crafts, in our culture, in our heritage, but it has no exposure. The best education marketer is exposure. So we are going to bring exposure here at our doorstep, and then warehouse and the showcase before the global village. So we are going to create a business exchange during the General Assembly, in addition obviously to our own business exhibition, where the delegates will be able to go around and see product.
Honorable Mzembi, it was such a pleasure to have you. It was such an eye-opener as well, because if somebody hears UNWTO, they don't have a clue, you know, how this could benefit other African countries as well. It's not just benefiting Zimbabwe and Zambia. So thank you very much for having us in your office.
Thank you.
So the Honorable Minister spoke a lot about open borders. From the 24th of August to the 29th of August 2013, I for one am going to be at the UNWTO in Victoria Falls. But for now, I think I'm going to jet off to Kenya, support African tourism, chill with the Maasais, and probably have a cup of tea with the Obamas.
Coming up on Makosi Today.
We got honours the first time and we moved on to final.
Music helps us remember a lot of things that have happened in the past with our country. It helps us remember who we are.
Zumba Dance Fitness is a Latin-based program. It keeps people on their toes. You've got your Bollywood, you've got your hip-hop, so it's all mixed. Zumba is here to stay.